Hello and welcome to Tea Time Theology. I'm your host, Mariah Wakande, and today's guest is Dennis LaFreniere. Welcome, Dennis.
Well, thank you very much, Mo. I feel honored to be here with you today and very excited too.
Oh, good. I'm also very excited to have you here. A quick little overview. We'll be talking about two groups you're involved in that are theater and music groups, and I do a lot of theater and music, so very excited. Before we get into it, did you prepare a quote or a saying that you like to live your life by?
We have a quote that we quite often do in Fisherman's Follies, and it's nothing scriptural from the Bible, but it truly became our theme. And what we're dedicated to is spreading the love and the message of God through music and laughter.
That's beautiful, and that is right aligned with the stuff we're going to talk about today.
It is.
So before we get into Fisherman Follies, I was wondering, how did you find God in the Episcopal Church?
Well, and that ties into much of what we're talking about today. I was raised an Episcopalian, so in Rhode Island, to be correct, and I attended church because my mom and dad brought me to church, and I always felt connected in a way, to the point that when I was 11 years old, I was allowed to give the sermon in our church, and what a feeling that was to speak the word of God or speak about God and have people get anything from it. And as I grew older, I grew away from the church, and later in life, I married and we had children. And we wanted them to be raised with a relationship with God. So we came back to the Episcopal Church. And it was there that I just attended basically and listened. And one Sunday they asked me if I would be willing to teach Sunday school. And I reluctantly said yes, because I'm not a teacher and know nothing about teaching. And I knew very little about God actually at the time, but I was willing to do it. And it was through that my love and my relationship with God started to grow, in telling the stories of the Bible. And more than that, the people that are in the Bible and the situations that the people were in, and explaining that to somebody. God just started to manifest himself in my heart. And it's been that way for 25 years now.
Wow, that's beautiful. I was also raised in the Episcopal Church. I'm what is known as a cradle Episcopalian. And I was also raised in a really small church with a small congregation. So there's all these opportunities to get involved. So, you giving a sermon at 11 is, crazy, but also super cool. And something I love about the Episcopal Church is kind of anybody who is willing, ready to get on up here. Let's give it a go. Cool. So you were teaching Sunday school, and it sounds like that started to evolve into Fisherman Follies. So for me and for everyone listening, can you give us a little bit of what that is?
That is exactly where it started to evolve. Over the years, we taught a curriculum that the church had, and then I stumbled upon a curriculum called Fish Eyes. And what Fish Eyes were, it was 15 short video segments that we would show to our class, and then we would discuss it. And after I taught this for about 2 years, I started to think this would work as a play. This would work as a 90-minute production, a two-person production. And so this is where things are going to get weird. You can believe me if you'd like, or you cannot believe me. It doesn't matter. I remember thinking on it one day and praying on it. And a voice said, like if somebody was standing in the back of the room and spoke, you would hear it in your head. And the voice said to me, I want you to do this. And I remember in my head, seeing what was going on in my head, I said, I don't want to. And the voice said, no, I want you to do this. And I said, but I don't know how to do this. I wasn't involved in theater. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how anything. And the voice literally said to me, I will give you everything you need. And so I just went, okay, I guess so. And I called the people who wrote the book, and they said, wow, thank you for calling, because we have a script to go along with this series, and we'd be happy to, share it with you. And I got it, and I started looking for somebody else to be the other role with myself, and that person came up. And then we searched around more, and Dante Tavallaro was a high school student. Come on with you and give you the instruction you need to do a play. And the other person in my head knew somebody in his office who did lighting. And we said, well, wow, this is wonderful. It turned out the person that did lighting was 10 years old.
Oh my goodness.
That was his love. So, who am I to question God? God gives us strange people, strange situations. In all of these aspects got together, and we worked and we rehearsed, and we got it together, and we sold out a church hall for 2 days in a row. And it was absolutely an amazing thing. And that, if anything, showed me who God uses and how God uses them.
And when was this, and what was the show that you did?
That was a show called Fish Eyes, and we did it in 2007. Wow. And what Fish Eyes basically was Andrew and Peter, as they interact with Jesus in obviously the biblical time, but you never saw Jesus. Jesus was always just off stage. So we would speak, and you would understand what Jesus said by our reaction to his statement. So we would look off stage and we would say, you want us to feed them? With what? And then we would have a reaction, and we would say, oh, you want us to get it from them. So the relationship, and then there were many times where it was Andrew and Peter, I played the role of Peter, who would talk to each other about what had transpired. And the wonderful thing, I get pretty emotional when I talk about this. Yeah. The great thing about it was, in terms of Jesus' relationship with two people who had most of the time no idea what he was talking about. They just followed him for a reason. That when they met on the beach and they were fishing, and Jesus said, follow me. Peter's very reluctant in the play. Peter doesn't buy into this. Andrew buys into it immediately and says, we need to follow this guy. There's something about him. And me as Peter, I'm very reluctant to go. But as the play goes on and we start doing things with Jesus and going places with Jesus, I buy into it 100%. And Andrew then becomes very cautious, because Andrew sees where this is going, where I am 100% in Jesus. You can count on me for everything, until the time came for him to count on me for everything. And I then denied I even knew him. So it goes, it's 15 different scenes, and they're quite funny. Do you want me to keep going on about this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm enthralled.
There's one particular scene where Andrew and I are together, and I tell Andrew that the talk he gave on the Hill was absolutely amazing. And Andrew says, yes, I took my book with me and I wrote some things down. And I tell Andrew, I didn't have to. I have it all right up here. I locked it up in my head. I have it here, tick-a-lock. And Andrew says, well, then I'll test you on it. And he opens the book, and turns out I don't know a single thing about it. But I just keep asking him for the next word, and then I bluff him through the next word. And the scene is absolutely hilarious. And it ends with the Lord's Prayer. And, we've had priests tell us who are in the audience that scene alone, because it starts with such laughter and ends with such love, it brings you to tears. It will bring you to tears in that scene alone. So in the play goes on through the crucifixion and the resurrection. It's an amazing play. It's amazing because it's just two people, and there you never see Jesus, but he's there. And I mean, how much is that? How much is that like real life? How many of us really see Jesus, but we all know he's there. So
yeah, and I see you, getting emotional while you're talking about it, and talking about the reactions that clergy members and other people in the audience have. And so, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more about how producing these performances, how it informs your understanding and your own relationship with God, and what it does for others who are watching.
Right. And it was very nice that we began with Fish Eyes, because Fish Eyes gave me a very direct relationship with God. As we moved through some other plays that we did, I got a much wider understanding of that, of the entire relationship of God and Jesus, man, and manifest in man. And we did another play called Creation Chronicles, where we began with creation of God and the angel Gabriel discussing man. And that for me opened my mind to the like how great and how big God is. That God is the universe. God created all of these things that link together in ways that we don't even have an understanding. And we as people in Creation Chronicles, it tells the story of the Tower of Babel. It tells the story of Adam and Eve. It tells the story of Cain and Abel. And it tells these stories how we seem to take it askew. We seem to, as sinners, we seem to get it wrong at times, and we seem to, and God just keeps fixing it. God just keeps bringing it. And it's those lessons for me personally when I see these, and I work with actors, and so I have to tell the actor, or sometimes, because I direct all this stuff too, I have to direct them in a way that they feel that also. In Creation Chronicles, one of the stories was Moses coming back to find the Israelites in a whooping party. And Aaron has a party hat on, and he's got a horn, and he has to answer to Moses why this is going on. And one of the things I wanted to get from Moses, I wanted to tap on the love where he had just spent time. He had spent time with God, and he comes back to people. And I wanted to tap on an anger in him. And we were able to do that. And that was, for me, to get to do that, just like shows like how powerful God is, and what his relationships are with us as human people.
And who's in the audience at these things? I imagine there's a lot of people that also go to your church here. This is at Emmanuel in Cumberland, right?
Right.
And so I imagine these take place at Emmanuel Church, right?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah,
because one of the fun things about this and being an Episcopalian is we have been almost all over Rhode Island. We've been to St. James, both of them. We've been to St. Paul's. We've been to Catholic churches. We've been to a Methodist church in Cumberland. We went to an evangelical church in East Providence. We have taken this message and this way of telling God's story to lots and lots of different venues. There's a lot of humor in these particular playwrights that we do. And one of the fun things for the actors and myself is when we go through it, there's a lot of biblical humor that you will only understand if you understand the story. So when we do our lines and we tell our stories, we listen, and we can hear all of a sudden when we do a joke that only a priest would get. We hear the, hear the subtle laughter, when I'm telling him of the transfiguration, I tell him Elijah shows up on a mountain. And Andrew's response to me when I tell him that is, goes, imagine that. Because we've been setting a place for him at the table all this time, and he shows up on a mountain. You know, if you don't understand what that means, you wouldn't understand the joke. So that's all. But we do quite a few at Emmanuel, and we really enjoy taking this to other congregations and to other people, and to share share the laughter, share this laughter in these stories. That is it. That we believe sometimes there are so many people who just don't. Yeah, I really don't read the Bible because I don't get it, or it's boring, or it's this. And we'll make you laugh, and we'll show you. We'll show you the love of God through laughter. And then a lot of people said, I've gone back and I read that. I read the Tower of Babel because we never understood it like that. And our version of the Tower of Babel are two people building it up on the top, and they both speak different languages. Yet they both speak the same language, yet they don't understand each other with the terminology they use. And then God interferes in the form of lightning. They then don't understand each other, and it's hilarious how they don't understand each other. And then people went back and said, well, I read the real story later because you made that story so interesting. I wanted to see what it was like.
And I think that's what is so powerful about theater. That's why it exists. I think for all reasons. I mean, it's a way to teach lessons. It's a way to give a voice to the voiceless, and it's a way to make concepts, make ideas more accessible to people, make them believable by people. So, to take these stories that we may or may not know, I'm a cradle Episcopalian. I've been going to church for the majority of my life, but I couldn't tell you what happens in these stories. I couldn't name you like famous stories in the Bible, maybe outside of like Adam and Eve. So then to be able to go and see a show and have it explained to me with humor and with emotion, to see it played out, it can have a really powerful effect. It can start a conversation with God that may have never been started had you not been able to receive him in that way. So I think it's great. My family's always said that God has a sense of humor.
Oh, absolutely. There is so much. There is and these writers are particular. They're two writers from Pennsylvania, and they do an excellent job, I believe, in tying humor in, but they don't lose. There's never a bad joke. There's never humor at God's expense. It's always humor at the root of the story. Because the root of the story to us might have an element of humor that we're afraid to laugh at, and that's where it comes out. The fact that we believe that the 12 apostles were, had educations and biblical degrees. No, they didn't. They were no different than you. And if you think you need to be a priest, or you need to have a degree to understand God's word and feel God's word, then I think they are the ones that are wrong. It's people who, hear these stories and feel them in their hearts. That's I think what God, and in the plays Creation Chronicles actually ends with the story of Noah, and it ends with God coming to the conclusion that he cannot create something and then be apart from it. In order for him to create it and it to be what he wanted it to be, he needed to be part of it. He needed to be with man. And at the end of Creation Chronicles, God thinks for a minute, he lights a candle, and then he gives Gabriel a certain job, and then he leaves. And the only thing the audience sees is the candle, which represents the light of Christ. And then that then takes up with the next play called Dovetail, which is the story of the Nativity, where that is my favorite play. That is the one of all the plays we do that. And I play the angel Gabriel because I had to bicker with God to get the job to go tell Mary that she was going to bear the Christ child. And he didn't want me to do it at first because of what happened to Isaiah. He didn't want me to do it because with the Isaiah and the wrestling and the hip thing, but I talked him into it. And that's how Dovetail begins, is with me showing up at Mary's apartment. And Dovetail is the story of the Nativity done more or less today. So when I show up to Mary and I tell her where I come from, who I am, and God has chosen her, she can't believe it. She can't believe it. And eventually I do convince her that God needs a safe place to stop, and he has chosen you. And I tell her some reasons why he's told her. And then Mary then goes to a dinner with her fiance as they're planning their marriage very soon. And she tells him that she's pregnant. But she didn't do anything wrong. She didn't sleep with anyone. And then Joseph's reaction to this is where the play then starts to go. And I mean, I would ask the average girl or guy on the street, if you're planning your wedding and your fiance tells you you're pregnant, what are you going to do with that? And Joseph leaves, as it says in the Bible. And then I appear to Joseph in a dream. We wrestle, and I convince Joseph to go back and marry her, which he does. And then it goes through the whole delivery of the baby Jesus. And there's lots of laughs, and there's lots of characters. There's 2 hilarious shepherds that I appear to, because in the Bible, he appears to shepherds. The only problem is these shepherds are not the brightest shepherds in the world. and they get the message all wrong, and I'm trying to correct it with them. And then there's the innkeeper, and there's so many great scenes. And in that play, I'm fortunate to play the angel Gabriel. I play the innkeeper. I play another person. And the root of the play is that I'm involved with everything that had to do with Mary, because God never deserted Mary through the entire time. And it's a phenomenal, it's one of my favorite plays.
I love hearing you talk about it and all these different stories. It's making me really emotional, and I'm feeling really thankful for you being so expressive and open, because something that has been really weighing heavily on me during this time, we've been in a global pandemic now for many months, and it feels hard to stay connected to God. Churches closed for a long time, and many of them are still closed at the time of us recording this. And I'm just getting so nostalgic for that to be back in my life. And and I'm also getting nostalgic for theater, and to go somewhere and to have a communal experience with people. How this is more of a personal question, but how have you been doing with your faith during such a trying time? How are you getting through? I need this advice or your perspective.
It is it's been hard as far as theater goes, because I did have plans for how I wanted to keep Fisherman's Follies doing these stories and doing these plays. I had reached out to another theater group not in the area for scripts and ideas to keep going. And then I wanted to transition to a totally different group of people, just to keep this method going. Even though I'm gone, it would keep on going. And those plans are all been put on hold. Um, what has me personally is I will tell you that God takes really, really good care of me. And it has, so I do other things also. One of the other things that I do is video. So I do movies and I do videos. So what I've been doing and occupying my time with is virtual church. So I've been doing at Emmanuel, I've been filming, we do a morning prayer service like a lot of churches do. And then I edit it and I insert prayers, and we would then put it up on the Emmanuel webpage for our congregation to see. When we were rolling just before, just recently, we were planning on filming Eucharist service also. And then having that. And then with streaming was coming down the road. I've been able to focus on that. You know, I know someday I will get back to the theater portion of this. And right now, God has provided the video world. What I'm working with now is trying to figure out how to incorporate the two. These are incredibly great stories to tell, and I'm trying to create a way of using video and the theater to provide an offering so people can sit at home and watch these plays also. So I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful.
Great. I'm just gonna wait for my next question because there's a fire.
Oh, there you go.
Going on outside. The joys of doing a Zoom interview. Well, that's great. I'm really glad that there are still ways for you to be creative, to get the word of God out to people, to try to keep things going as much as possible in this evolving time. I did want to also talk about another group that you're a part of called New Fire. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, New Fire is it's a praise band that I play in, and to classify us as a praise band would be to eliminate the evolution and the work of God in our lives. And it wasn't like me and a couple other musicians were idle and had nothing to do, and we thought this would be a wonderful thing. New Fire actually evolved from a group of musicians called Hymns and Hers. Get it? Hymns and Hers. And that was the band of Christ Church in Lonsdale. And back in the 70s and the 80s, there was a welcoming of an acoustic guitar in a church that would normally have organs in the traditional choir. And there was an offering of an acoustic guitar. And I believe Emmanuel started with that and then added musicians and another guitar and some singers. And they would sing one Sunday a month, and they would provide this offering. Well, to tie in with the Fisherman's Follies story, when I came to Emmanuel Church, I would see this group of musicians play once a month. And I have been a musician since I was 13. So I had been playing for about 45 years by that time. And I saw them playing, and I approached one of the musicians and I said, hey, I play guitar too. And he said, well, why don't you bring your guitar? And I joined the group. And we played mostly traditional hymnal songs, just converted to guitar, bass, and we actually had about 10 people at the time, and we did songs from a book called it's just moved out of my head, Glory and Praise, I believe, Praise and Glory. It's something like that. We did songs out of that book. Well, you probably can detect by this time that I'm not the calmest person, peaceful person in the world. And when I play with the same energy that I do this with. So we soon cracked into the traditional Christian contemporary music, the Chris Tomlin, Crowder, all these artists, and we seem to do it pretty well. And with that, I have been able to do in the Episcopal Church all the things that I've ever wanted to do, and people seem to accept it and they allow me to be insane. And I love that. I love, so I brought that insanity, or that energy, if you will, to Hymns and Hers. And it changed a little bit the personality of the group to the welcome of the congregation. So one Sunday a month, we Hymns and Hers, the different style Hymns and Hers would play. And we did that for quite a long time. And eventually we went up to Emmanuel Church, and we continued that way. And over time, various musicians, things happen in your life, and you exit, or different ones came on board, and some exited. And it just felt like it was time for a change. It was time for a new thing. And one of the priests, Melody Show, at the time, suggested that we change the name to New Fire, being the new fire that we light at Easter, and that lights the light of Christ throughout the world. And so we adopted New Fire as our name. And we've continued from that point on. Basically, the group currently is only 4 of us. And we do play one Sunday a month. And we've been lucky enough to play at a couple other churches every now and then in the diocese. And we got to play the coolest thing that I've ever done. We got to play Waterfire the night that the Episcopal Diocese sponsored it. And
that is cool.
It was, you play at church, you play in front of 100 people, and that's excellent because there's such a connection. But to play in front of a couple thousand people at Waterfire was an amazing experience. I hear
New Fire at Waterfire.
It was. I hear other musicians, and I truly appreciate the fact that other musicians who play popular music these days connect with their audiences and feel that. But when you play music inspired by the Word of God or with the love of God, that feedback from the audience is even on a given Sunday, that many times I often am in tears when I'm playing because of what I feel come back from the congregation. What they give back as we sing to them the songs of God and songs about God.
I love that. And hearing you talk about it, it is inspiring me. It's giving me hope to, keep moving forward, and that we'll make it through. You're right. God does take care of us, and He has His relationship with all of us and His plans for all of us. And it's part of our job to keep the faith and to keep that hope. So I was wondering, what are your hopes for both Fisherman Follies and New Fire, if and when we ever get to a place in our world again where there's semi-normal interaction and gathering.
This may sound silly, but when we are able to gather again and do these things, I want to go back and visit my old friends. I want to before I move on, I want to do these plays again. I want to share these messages and do these, because these are basic, loving, God's love in a message in a play. And I'd like to go back and do these plays one more time before I move on to another set of plays. I would like to move on to do this type of situation in a video aspect too. I'd love to get together with a scriptwriter or someone who has a message that I would love to make a short video, and Fisherman's Follies could go into a video production situation. New Fire is just dying to get together. We are we miss that so much. We miss that relationship with God, and we miss that relationship with each other, that we can share something with another Christian and experience God that way. I mean, as far as what you just said about, these being tough times, and these are and I truly believe this. And I think if you read the Bible and you look, there's been tough times for Christians in the Bible, but God has never deserted us. God has never left us alone. He has always been there. So when we're sad, and when we're pandemicized, he's still there, and he still has his hand on your shoulder. So you reach out to another Christian, you listen to your podcasts, you do something, and there you go.
Dennis, thank you so much for being on our podcast. You've really brought it. You brought the hope. You brought the faith. I'm so grateful to have had this time to chat a little bit with you.
Me too, Mo. It's been a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Before we officially sign off, do you have any social media or anything you want to plug, either for Emmanuel or for any of these groups?
We just emmanuelri.org. That's our webpage for Emmanuel Church, and everything that I do video is posted there now. There's some new fire there also, and there's there's all the video things that I've been doing that are posted there now.
Great. Thank you so much for being on. And
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Tea Time Theology. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Episcopal Diocese of Rhode Island, and the Right Reverend Nicholas Knisley. We would like to thank Mario Aconde and Jack Zornato for the music, Taylor Wilkie and Ivy Swinsky, our producers, as well as our guest today. Follow us at Tea Time Theology on all social medias.
For